Ghana. And to those of you joining us from Kenya, welcome and good afternoon as well. I'm privileged to be sharing with you today on human resources management. I know that all of us are from the tourism industry and people are key to this sector. So I think that this is an important subject for us. I'll just give a bit of an introduction to myself. My name is Dr. Amanobe Boateng. I have an organization that I formed called Women's DNA Foundation and Fund, where we support women entrepreneurs with training in different skills. And we aspire to become a funder as well. And for the moment, we do training and we have done so for the past year or so. I'm looking forward to this session and I hope that it'll be interactive. Please, as Caroline said, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. And then afterwards, during the Q&A, we can tackle them. If you want to stop me as well, I won't say no. It's human resources is a heavy area and we can do with some breaks in between. If you want to talk about your experience about something, that would be interesting to hear. And as I share, please take note of how it applies to your context and examples that you might have that we can all learn from. So thank you very much. And we can begin. Caroline, can we please move on to the next slide? Right, so I'm going to be sharing about human resources. Why do we need it? And it is such a broad field. So we're going to be looking at a number of areas. We're going to look at the overall field of strategic HR management. We're going to look at strategic goals, the essentials of HR strategy, staff recruitment and selection. And I know that that's a key one because of the people who are in our sector, tourism. Performance management and appraisal, training and empowering, the risk management aspects, and employee protection, health and safety. And then I also want us to look at the dilemma that we face as SMEs when we have to take on human resources and integrate it into our businesses. And then I want to look at HR in a nutshell, because as I said, it's quite complex and it's broad. So how can we take all of that and turn it into a capsule that we can actually apply? And with COVID-19, I think it's important to see how we can use HR as a tool in how we want to reposition ourselves. Thank you, Caroline. We can move on. So why is human resources important? HR, as we call it. Why is it important? Why do we care about it? And the reason for that is that businesses are about people. It's been said that people are our most valuable asset. Please carry on, Caroline. So people are a company's greatest asset. And the value that they bring is, it's not something that you can touch. It's not material, it's intangible. The tourism sector it's a people sector. It's all about the service that you provide to your customers. And that service is provided by the people that you employ. So human resources is key. And the quality of your people can give your business a competitive edge. The knowledge and abilities that employees bring, their KSA as it's called, knowledge, skills, abilities, they generate the goods and services that you sell. And job satisfaction, their job satisfaction is positively correlated to your success. If they're happy employees, they do well at work and your business in turn does well. And your employees are your brand ambassadors. They carry the business with them. So it's important that they're well taken care of. And they create the value that contributes to business goodwill. So we talk about human capital because people are so valuable to what we do as businesses. Therefore, human resources, human capital. Can we move on, please? Thank you, Caroline. So as I said, it's complex and it has all of these areas and more, but I'm going to give a general overview of these ones. And all of these areas are interlinked and influence one another. So job performance flows into productivity. Your strategic HR management links to the tasks that people do and so on. And we'll look at it. Can we move on, Caroline? Thank you. So strategic human resource management is the broad field of HR. Everything that you do in HR can be put under the umbrella of strategic HR management. And why do we say strategic? Because it should be intentional. HR is not something that you just do, it's not something that you just do randomly. It is intentional, it's deliberate, it is tied in with your business strategy. And it's the people side of your business. It's about nurturing your people and using them optimally to achieve your business goals. It doesn't stand alone, it follows your business strategy. So it's important to have a sound business strategy in order for your HR to be able to mirror it and serve it appropriately. So can we move on? Thank you. This is quite a detailed slide, but basically all it is saying is that in order to achieve our HR strategic goals, we set goals for the strategy, we look at objectives, and we look at functions. So you must have objectives that can enable you to achieve your goals that you have set out for your HR strategy. And then the functions are where your people come in. So you plan the job functions in order to be able to achieve the objectives, which in turn will achieve the goals. So for instance, if your HR goals are to improve employee productivity, to develop your employees, to increase the quality of their work life, to ensure customer compliance. What do we mean by customer compliance? There are customers who, for instance, might require that we will only do business with us if we comply with in certain areas. It can do with ethics. Are we a company that employs a certain level of women? Are we a company that has sustainable working methods? Do we do sustainable tourism? That sort of thing. So that's what I mean by customer compliance. So those could be the goals, but the goals mirror the goals of your business strategy. And then you break that down into objectives. What objectives can you set that will enable you to achieve those bigger overall human resource goals? So for instance, recruiting people timeously, recruiting them at the right time, making sure that people are properly involved in their jobs. They're not just doing one thing from one day to the next, but they know what they're doing. Reskilling people, the training and empowerment, getting employee commitment, enhancing job satisfaction, controlling your employee costs. And then it's broken down again into functions. And that is all the different functions that can happen in HR: designing the job analysis, manpower planning, training and development, career management. So different things that need to be done in HR in order to achieve strategic goals. The next one, please. Thank you. So what's the HR strategy? The human resources strategy, it's basically a long-term plan to establish the HR activities in your company. It aligns the management of your employees with the business activities so that it can contribute to organizational performance. And as I've said a number of times, your HR strategy must follow your business strategy. The HR strategy does not stand alone. It serves to help you to implement and achieve your business goals. And your strategy needs to be measurable through key performance indicators. A SWOT analysis can help you to plan the strategy, where, for instance, your strengths, you exploit your strengths to be able to take advantage of opportunities that are out there, and you identify your weaknesses and mitigate them and try and minimize them, and as well as the threats that are external to your company but might pose obstacles to your company. You try and find ways to mitigate that threat. The next one, please. Thank you. So again, the organizational needs analysis. This is where you're looking at what the organization needs in terms of human resources. So your corporate strategy. We've said that the business strategy has to be aligned to your HR strategy needs to be aligned to the business strategy. So you need to know that corporate strategy. You need to know the business strategy. The HR strategy needs to be in alignment with the changes that are happening in the environment. We do not exist in isolation. So whatever is happening out there in the bigger world has an impact on your businesses. We've all seen what has happened with COVID. So in other ways, what is happening externally that may impact on your business, and how do you need to take steps in your human resource strategy to be able to deal with what's happening in the environment. And you also look at the way that the business might be changing in future. Again, that's part of the business strategy. Are we going to be diversifying? Are we going to be bringing on new product lines? Are we going to be bringing in new types of tourism that require new types of jobs to be created, that require people to be reskilled and so on? So these are considerations. Can we move along, please? Thank you. So what are some of the essentials when we want to develop an HR strategy? The people in charge of HR, the officers, they should know the strategy and they must participate in its creation. So HR is so big and it's so complex that often when we think about it, we are talking about corporate organizations. So an organization that would have teams of people under HR, anybody who is involved in HR, even if it's for an SME or a corporate, whoever is involved in HR needs to know what the strategy is about. They need to know it, be familiar with it, and know what it aims to do. And they should be part of the job of creating it. Why must they be involved in creating it? Because it gives them ownership of the strategy. And when they have ownership, they work towards its fulfillment. The strategy also has to have management buy-in. If the managers who are in charge of the business are not in accordance with what the HR strategy is doing, the HR strategy will fail. So there has to be buy-in from management, and there has to be allocated budget to carry out the strategy. Whatever you do in HR, your practices, your activities will flow from the strategy. Performance incentives should be linked to the execution of the strategy. It should be monitored for effectiveness using KPIs, and it should be long-term. So when you do an HR strategy, it should be something that is looking at the HR requirements and the HR of your company for a long time to come, at least a year. So it's not something that you do and accomplish immediately. It's looking to the future. So it's future oriented. It's enabling you to plan ahead of time and even plan, for instance, your staffing needs. So you're going to be anticipating what your business will be needing in terms of HR for some time to come. And even though you're planning it ahead of time, it has to be flexible. It has to be flexible to take account of changes that may be happening. Right. Can we move to the next one, please? Okay. So jumping right on to staff recruitment and selection. I believe that that's a big one for us in the tourism sector because there's quite a high level of staff turnover in the sector. And then also because the sector is so dependent on the people who work in it, the recruitment and selection is important. So we need to prepare ahead before we recruit and select the people who will work for us. We need to prepare ahead. The HR planning needs to come in to determine the staffing needs that we have ahead of time. I mentioned this in the slide before in terms of setting our strategy. We need to determine our staffing needs ahead of time, and we need to have a staff budget and know the currently available staff. So basically, you determine who you have now and what the future looks like in terms of the requirements. And that allows you to know what your hiring needs are. And then you need to design the jobs. You need to do some job design for the positions. You don't just go out and hire people. You look at the requirement of the jobs, and then you design them in terms of the roles and responsibilities, the job description, the qualifications and experience that is required, so that even before you go out and look for people, you know what you're looking for. Otherwise, the tendency will be to take whoever comes along who seems okay, and down the line, you may sit with people who aren't suited to the task that you want them to perform. And you end up doing a lot of the work by yourself, or they end up being sidelined, demotivated, and nobody wins in that situation. Can we move on? Thank you. So again, with recruitment and selection, that the previous slide looked at the preparation. This slide looks at the actual process. So recruitment and selection. What is recruitment? Recruitment is putting together a pool of potential candidates that we can choose from. And that pool can come from internal and external sources. So internally, what are we talking about? We are talking about people moving from one position within the organization to another. And externally, we are looking at using your recruitment agents. We are looking at putting out job adverts. We are looking at all the things that we do in order to be able to attract people to apply for the jobs. And then when you're recruiting, it's also good to know, to have some knowledge of the industry. Where do other people who compete with you, where do they find their candidates? And then as we go along, it's good to keep an ear out and have an eye open for the talent before it's needed. So even before I know that I need to hire for ABC positions, I'm aware that there are people who might be suited in a certain place. Maybe a certain college produces them. Maybe through my networks, I've been able to identify people who would be suitable for my needs down the line. And when that time comes, I know that there are these people and I can go to them. So that's the recruitment. And we look at selection. What are the processes? The processes are designed to help us choose the best candidates for the job. So your processes are your application form, your experience, qualifications, references that you ask for on your application form. All of that allows you to separate people and to screen so that you get closer and closer to what you're looking for before you even have your screening interviews. And through the screening interviews, you again eliminate. And this whole process is designed to enable you to get a short list of candidates for each job that you're then going to be able to select from to occupy the positions. So that's your recruitment and selection. If we go along now, Caroline, thank you. Performance management and appraisal. I mentioned that all of the different areas in HR tie into one another. So performance management and appraisal, it's something that we do on a regular basis where we sit with staff to find out how they're performing on the job, and also to hear from them what their views are on what they're doing. If they have any thoughts, if they have any problems, that's where we hear them. But it's also a good platform for identifying people who may be candidates, internal candidates for future positions. So performance management, it covers all the interaction between your employee and the supervisor. So basically, if I walk across to go and talk to my staff, finding out what are they doing today? How are they coming along with everything that they're doing? Do they have any problems? What can we do? Your meetings, your staff meetings, and so on. All of that is performance management, all your interaction with them. The appraisal now comes in where it's deliberately designed to evaluate your employees' job performance and their contribution through their jobs. What's the purpose of performance appraisal? It provides feedback. It gives you feedback from your employees on how they're doing in their jobs, any problems they might have. It's a formal evaluation of how they're doing. and it's a reference point for allocating salary increases and bonuses. What do we mean by that? As you do your performance appraisal and evaluation, you're able to you're able to establish where people are. How are they growing in their job? How much effort are they putting into their jobs? Are they excelling? You're able to get information that lets you know what to do in terms of the possible salary increases, how to award your bonuses, and also how to identify training needs. In engaging with your employees that way, you find where they might fall short, where their problems might be, and that way you're able to know what you need to be able to bring in to supplement their knowledge, skills, and ability for better performance overall. We say that the responsibility for the performance appraisal lies with both the manager and the employee. So what we're saying is that the manager leads the appraisal, but the employee buys into it. As a manager, you're basically communicating with your employee and making them understand the importance of this process and how this impacts what they do. It's not about judgment. It's not about judging them, but it's about helping them to do their job properly. And if they understand that and buy into it, then they are able to take the results of the output of the appraisal and use it in their jobs so that their performance improves. And that's what we mean by both the manager and the employee having responsibility for the appraisal. Can we move on, please? Thank you, Caroline. So here are just some tips that I think that we can use for performance appraisal. We need to set goals for employees that are linked to the organization's goals. So we need to know what the organization's goals are. If the goal of an organization is to increase its customer base, maybe goals for employees should include, for instance, marketing, going out and getting a certain number of employees or a certain number a certain number of clients, or increasing the client base by a certain percentage per person. That could be a goal. And that goal allows you to be able to evaluate how they're doing. Goals can be different. And goals should also be flexible and they should be realistic. We mentioned that we should be aware of what is happening externally. Situations change. So the fact that you set a goal at a certain point in time, you may have to change that goal. You may have to modify it in different ways. It's possible that what you thought was important then isn't so important further down the line. And so you need that modification to be able to tweak the goals. And then for appraisal, often it's top down. It is a manager sitting with an employee. And I think that that's the simplest form of appraisal. But it is effective to have what they call 360-degree feedback as a form of appraisal. And that's where you get rounded feedback from different people in the organization. So if you're doing an appraisal of an employee, for instance, their subordinates will give you feedback on them. Their colleagues will give you feedback on them, and their supervisors. And they themselves will also do a self-evaluation. And this allows you to get a comprehensive view of how the person is doing in all the areas in which they are placed in the organization. So a person does not work in isolation. A person works in a team. So how effective is he in that team? So if you do a 360-degree, you're getting feedback that allows you to do proper appraisal. But it's complex and it's not necessarily possible for all of us to do. As I talk to you, I'm very aware of the fact that we are SMEs. I know that many of you have been in business for a long time. Your businesses are well established. And so some of these points may not apply to you. I do not know, you will advise me. I stand to be corrected. But for an SME, some of these things may be a bit too complicated. So for instance, the 360-degree feedback may not work. It is possible that for you, a manager sitting down with an employee to talk, that would be the best format for you. And it has to suit you. It has to suit what the nature of your business is. It's not a black and white, inflexible matter. It is, we need to be able to mold it to suit our use. If we are sitting down with an employee, it's good to have an evaluation form. I'm thinking of a manager sitting down with an employee. It shouldn't be random. You should have thought ahead as to how you're going to engage with the employee so that you have a form that guides the session and that makes it more effective and fruitful. I mentioned before that it should not be personal. So evaluations should be objective. They shouldn't be based on emotion. It shouldn't be about, this person doesn't like me, I don't like that person. And evaluations work best if there are clearly defined roles and responsibilities to guide the performance appraisal. Because if you haven't set roles and if you haven't clearly defined the tasks that a person is responsible for, what they are doing, if you haven't given them their job description and shown them exactly what they are here to do, then it could be unfair to sit them down and say, you're not doing your job correctly, or I expected to see A, B, and C, and I'm not. There needs to be clear communication from the outset on what the roles and responsibilities are to enable you to have effective performance appraisal. Can we move on, Caroline? Thank you. So training and empowering, or training and development, is important. It is one way in which we boost the knowledge, skills, and abilities of our staff to help them to do the job properly. It is also empowering in the sense that it is motivating. It is motivating for staff to know that you are investing in them, not just time, but also resources. You're giving them time to go and sit and learn, to improve themselves, and in improving themselves, also improving their performance and ultimately the business itself. So there are different types of training. There's formal training and there's informal training. There's on-the-job training, there's in-classroom learning. And the kind of training that we provide for our employees. Sorry about that. Caroline?
Hello.
Hello, Caroline. Sorry about that. I don't know what that was.
No problem.
Okay.
Let me see if all participants are on mute. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, we can continue.
Okay. I'll just switch off my phones. Thank you. All right. I don't have the slide up. Let me see. Did it? Where are we? Caroline, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you see the slide?
Yeah, I can see the slide now.
Okay.
I can see the slide now. So training and empowering, I apologize for that interruption. So I was saying that there are different types of training, formal, informal, on the job or in classroom learning, and that the type of training that we use depends on the needs and the type of business. So it's not always necessary to send people to go and attend a course externally. It could be that you spend time with them, showing them how to do their job in-house. It could be that you bring somebody into the business to come and train people as they work. And all of this is designed to improve, as we said, their skills, knowledge, and ability. To know what the training needs are is important. You need to establish what the training needs are rather than just deciding we're going to train in this. it can end up being costly. So it's important to establish what your training needs are. And the performance appraisal can help to do that. The business strategy can also help to do that, because if you know what the business is aiming for, you know what the business goals are, the skills that are required to be able to carry them out, then it can inform your training needs. Post-training evaluation is important because there has to be transfer from the training to the job. In other words, as people go for training, as they learn, they have to be able to transfer what they are learning into the job to improve their performance. And we need to track the impact of the training on organizational performance. So if you've sent a team of people to go and train, when they come back, we need to be able to track how the business is benefiting from this training that people have gone and done. The work environment also needs to be receptive to the new skills that have been learned. So if people have gone and learned to do some kind of technological training, to use a new software that'll help the business, and then they come back, but the upgrades that are necessary for them to utilize that have not been put into practice, then the work environment is not allowing them to put into practice what they've gone and learned. And then your training also, it increases the pool of potential candidates that you will have in-house for future job openings. So these are all some of the uses of training and empowering your staff. If we move on to the next one. Right. So training needs analysis. It's important to analyze your training needs. We have said that through the job performance review, you can assess what the training needs are, but you also need to do a deliberate training needs analysis. If you want to train an employee, you need to determine whether training is actually the solution to solve the problems that you're identifying. So the performance appraisals are one thing. Interviewing HR, your HR person, interviewing them to find out whether this is what the staff member needs. Interviewing the staff member himself and the people that he works with, and also doing a survey to find out what do staff members think that they need in terms of training. What are their career aspirations in terms of your business? And is it in line with the strategy? Is this something that you want to help them to achieve? And all of that helps you to determine whether training is the solution that you need for to improve performance. And then you need to determine whether your employees have the knowledge, skills, and ability to perform their job. So in the first instance, you've looked at performance appraisals, you've done interviews, you've done a needs analysis. But then if you've met with your employees and you determine that they have suitable knowledge and skills to carry out their jobs, then maybe training is not the solution. You know, maybe they need some other kind of input. It could be that they need a mentor within the organization. You know, it could be that they don't have the resources, all the resources that they need to be able to carry out the job. Maybe they do have the knowledge and skills, but they could do with additional resources to be able to perform the task properly and use those skills in carrying out their job. And then finally, we need to make a decision. If they don't have the knowledge, skills, and abilities, then we need to train them to boost that. And then if systems and resources are in place, for instance, they know what they're supposed to be doing, they are clear about the performance, the standards that are required for their job, they know everything that they need to be able to do their job, then training is not the solution, as we mentioned before. So it's clear that you really have to have a good handle on where your employees stand in terms of their abilities now, how they are performing their jobs, and where the gap might be. So you should be putting, you should be making an effort to identify the gaps that your employees have. I know that often it's easy to think that your staff are not working hard enough, that people come to work and they just sit. But we also need to take the responsibility for actually finding out what the problem is in order to be able to help them to boost their performance. It's not necessarily that people are lazy. It's also a function of whether they have the skills. Can we help them to get the skills? Do they have the tools that they need? So all of that is important. And through the job appraisals, through the talking to different people within the job setting and communicating with the employee themselves, we are able to identify some of these things. Could we move on, please? Thank you. So we've looked at training needs. Now we're going to look at risk management. I mentioned earlier on that all the different areas tie in from one thing to another. So risk management, we're looking at how to mitigate risks, how to prevent problems from happening within the organization. One of them, a key one, will have to do with your staff. And if we've done some of the things that I spoke about before, if we've had regular evaluation, we've had regular appraisal of the employee, that allows communication. If the communication channels are open, if we have made clear the messages to employees on what is required of them, if their tasks are clear, their responsibilities are clear to them, it helps to mitigate some of these risks. So all of these areas tie in. So for instance, one of the risks that an organization can face is reduced productivity by employees. Reduced productivity because there's a lot of absenteeism, or people don't do quality work and they refuse to take responsibility for it. They pass the buck. You know, they don't recognize that they are responsible for producing excellence and for producing quality work. There are health and safety issues, issues that could happen at work. Did people have the right protective gear? Did people get hurt on the job? You know, there's the risk of litigation. People could take you to court. Your clients could take you to court because when your staff took them out on a tour of some kind, they got hurt because the right protective gear, equipment, safety measures were not in place. And then there's always worker disgruntlement. When workers are not motivated and they're unhappy, they can take it out on the organization. So these are some of the risks that we can face from employees. And as I said, proper training helps to mitigate some of these. So in order to be able to carry out proper risk management, you need to be a good leader. We need good leadership. Good leaders help employees to realize their potential. And when your employees know that they are working for you, but they're also growing. They're growing as individuals. They are growing in meeting their career aspirations, that there's room for them in the company to get somewhere. It's not just a mundane job that they come to every day without any hope of it ever being different. If employees are bored, these are all problems. But a good leader will be able to get the best out of his employees and even make them realize things in themselves that they didn't know they had before. Risk management needs you to hire competent staff to minimize the risk. Again, one area tying into the other. We looked at your recruitment, selection and recruitment. You need to be able to identify who you need for specific jobs. You need to have designed the job before going out to hire. In designing the job, you will set out the qualifications and experience and types of people that you want. That allows you to go out and hire the right sorts of people. And that minimizes the risk that they will come and they will be incompetent and it'll lead to reduced productivity. We need to have business continuity plans. In case of an unforeseen eventuality, business needs to carry on. COVID was a big one that we keep coming to. Nobody saw COVID coming, but there are organizations that very quickly, when COVID hit, they were able to pivot, turn around, and change direction and remain effective and remain successful. The businesses that, for instance, changed from producing one thing to suddenly producing inputs for the COVID pandemic were successful. And so business continuity plans basically say, if things suddenly change, can this business continue? And what will it need to be able to continue? So we all need business continuity plans. We need to ensure that health and safety measures are in place for our employees, both on site at work and when they go out for work purposes. In the tourism industry, I know that some of us run, for instance, some of us may be travel agents, some of us may be travel agents, but in addition, a lot of us run businesses where we take customers for adventure experiences or different kinds of experiences. We take them on tours around the country. This is big in Ghana. I know that it's big in Kenya too. So your staff go out with your clients. Are health and safety measures in place on all of these outings? And there are different types of outings. It could be long distance travel. It could be going off to go and do hiking. It could be going off for boat rides and so on. You need to have the health and safety measures. And also, employees need to be educated in the health and safety measures. It's not good enough to have, for want of a better example, a fire extinguisher. People need to know how to use it so that if there's a fire, they can put it out using the fire extinguisher. There needs to be clear communication, not just to staff, but from staff. So there needs to be open communication channels, two-way communication channels, so that staff feel free to come and express their problems to you, their grievances, whatever it is, they feel free to talk to you. They should not be afraid to approach you. And you should make your messaging clear. Let them know what you said. What you wanted to say should be what you say. They shouldn't have to guess at what is being said. Training needs to be effective to motivate staff and to increase productivity. We've looked at that previously. And staff need to be motivated. They need to be motivated. They need to know that they are being paid fairly. They need to know that their welfare is taken care of. There needs to be equity in the way you treat your staff, so there's not favoritism. It's demotivating for staff members to know that somebody is the preferred person over them. So it's important for there to be equity. And in motivation and fair pay and how to look after your employees' welfare, there are guidelines. There are guidelines that are regulated in Ghana, in Kenya, and we can look to them for guidance. It's important to be cognizant of them because, for instance, if we take pay, if an employee knows that the law or it is regulated that in this industry, this is what people are paid, but I am getting less, or they know that their colleagues are getting a certain level of pay and they are getting less, but they're doing the same job, it is demotivating. So it's important to take steps to motivate your staff. Conflict resolution. You need to have effective, lawful, and fair systems for motivating, motivating staff. And then evaluation needs to be there. We've talked about it, where you give performance feedback and increase productivity. If you increase productivity, the company does well and staff also do well. Can we move on, Caroline? Thank you. Health and safety, we've talked a little bit about. I'm going to go straight in. Employees should be familiar with health and safety. It's important to have a designated official responsible for health and safety. And then you have to be in compliance with the regulatory authorities. We have the tourism regulatory authorities in Kenya. We have the Ghana Tourism Regulatory Authority as well. I saw that recently the guidelines and protocols have been updated for Ghana as far as COVID goes. So for instance, we have to be aware of what exists and be and comply with it. Protective equipment I mentioned earlier. We have to make sure that the safety of our customers and our clients is there. And we need to have a safety plan, a health and safety plan, and we need to train staff for emergency situations. Thank you, Caroline. Okay, so now I've basically dealt with HR, and I want to look at how it affects us. As I'm sure you've gathered from everything that I've said and what the slides that have been put up, it is complex. It is complex and it is time consuming and it can be expensive, but it is necessary. And as SMEs, you know, you just want to get on with the business of doing business and running the company and doing well. However, it's important not to see HR as distracting. So let's try and put a good HR system in place that promotes our business success. And even with limited resources, it is possible to put something into place that meets our needs. And as our company grows, the HR system can grow with it. But it's good to have something in place from the get-go. Thank you, Caroline. Right, so I've basically taken everything that we've done and I'm saying, how do we just put it into a capsule that we can take and use for our purposes? So let's have a business strategy that is sound, that we can align to an HR strategy. This ensures that our employees are working to achieve business goals and that HR is also working to achieve the business's overall goals. Let's take care with our recruitment and selecting. Let's make sure that we are hiring the people that we need and not just the people that we think we need or the people who happen to be there. Let's do this and it promotes a positive image for the company and attracts quality staff. Let's have a competitive employment package so that new staff know what to expect and that they are looked after. Let's have a contract of employment in place. And let's develop skills and performance with job design, training and development, all that feeds into your job performance. And let's communicate effectively. This has come up quite a few times during the session. Let's communicate effectively so that we and our staff are working towards the same goal. And let's recognize and reward. Let's do performance reviews where we can see how people are working, and let's reward and recognize effort. Rewards don't need to be monetary. It can simply be, and I've seen this in lots of different places, employee of the week, employee of the month, that sort of thing. Just celebrating people who have done well. Thank you, Caroline. Right, so as we're all in this pandemic together, it's important to have it, to have ways of carrying on being successful with or without COVID. And so it's not business as usual. We have to create new sustainable business models for tourism. I'm thinking that our business strategy can change. Because of COVID, we can now have kinds of tourism that are more sustainable, We can have what they call staycations. I heard that term in South Africa. I don't know if it's a general term, but basically staycations. You're not traveling to go on vacation. You're vacationing right here in your country, going to see the beautiful sights. So you're not dependent on international travel. And how can your HR strategy reflect these business strategies that we come up with? And in turn, how can the HR strategy also make sure that staff are reskilled to be able to perform tasks to enable these new ideas to be able to take off? The employees are the ones who need to market and drive the initiatives, and so it's important for them to have the ability to do so. And then lastly, if I can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Caroline. So in concluding, our businesses are only as good as the people who work in it, our employees. So let's try and recruit the best employees for the job, and let's retain them using sound HR policies and practices. We've seen quite a few of them, and we've also seen that as complex as they are, we can cut them to suit our cloth, So let's do that, and let's take advantage of HR to make our businesses more successful. Thank you very much. I hope that that was useful, and I'd like to see what questions you have, and we can move on from there. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Dr. Boateng. So now the Q&A session is now open. So please feel free to unmute yourself or type your questions in the chat, and then we can read them out. Any questions?
If you don't have questions, would people maybe like to share your experience of the different things that we have talked about, some of the different areas, what you do in your business, how it impacts you, what are some of the challenges, and what have you done to get around the challenges that we could all learn from, maybe? Caroline?
Hi, Cindy. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this comprehensive lecture. Yeah, for me, in the past 10 years, I think HR has always been a challenge. I think it's a profession on its own, but it's also not a position you or within your company you think about immediately. I think within the HR, I have not always been able to make the right decision, lots of trial and errors. But I think it's where I find my answers is also to find out, like, what is your leadership style and the culture of your company? And especially also, what is your weakness, or what is my weakness? So it means, like, for a small company, is you need different type of skills. And sometimes you think, like, oh, if you are the director or the owner, you are maybe on top and you have to know everything. And for me to find out what are my weaknesses, and then to look for people who are better in certain areas that I am. I think that is what that approach is helps for me, so that you really are how shall I say it? Make yourself vulnerable and honest. Like, what is your weakness? And so look for people that are better than you within your company in certain areas. More like an advice or an experience from my side.
Thank you, Cindy. So yes, so that is basically identifying your gaps. Identifying your gaps and what you need to be able to, what skills are required in order to be able to fill them. Because you're right, we can't do everything. Nobody can know everything. So it's important to know those gaps so that you know who you can bring in to come and help to supplement those gaps. I think it's a very important it's very important for us to have that approach and be open to getting help.
Exactly.
Thank you. I'm seeing a comment from Minnie. She says the challenge that she experienced in tourism was getting very impressive CVs and then getting to the actual abilities of the individual. You find that they are nowhere near what they presented themselves as. Yes. So, Minnie, can I ask you, what do you do in that instance? What have you done to get around that problem?
Oh, wow. To be honest, I found now the institution I was representing at that time did not have a very defined structure on training. So for every time we set aside to do even internal training, it would be set and then probably put on hold or rescheduled for another time and all that. So ideally what happened when the 2-3 times I had such instances, if I realized that the individual we were interviewing for a position and they were not what's the word? They were not, what they said on the CV was not exactly who they presented themselves at, then we didn't hire. In fact, at some point, I actually preferred to train internally or to expose internally than to bring in an outsider. And normally it worked for that time, and it has always worked actually. You train internally and bring the individual up. Anyone showing potential of growth, you train internally and then bring them up to fit into the shoes you want them to fit into. Yeah.
That's a very good approach, because the person they already have the feel of the business. They're already familiar with the systems and structures. And so they can grow. You can train them and they can occupy a new position and they can grow where they are. And
Indeed.
You cut out some of the risk as well. Yes.
Indeed, yes.
Thank you, Minnie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other thing I think, Minnie, is that if you were to hire, it's always important to have a trial period. It's important to have a trial period. So you make it clear that you'll be on a probationary period for a month, or you specify, so that after that period, if they haven't performed, it was clearly stated from the outset, and you can let them exit. So that's also a possibility. And then I'm seeing.
We lost you. I lost you there for a moment. I don't know whether it was me or everyone.
Oh, I was talking about the probation periods. Yes. Maureen says the challenge during this pandemic is trying to get back staff to work without knowing what will happen tomorrow. That's a big one. That's a big one. We've all heard about the term furlough in the UK, in the US, where so many people have just been told to stay away from work. And initially they were paid an allowance or something, and that money is now drying up and people are without work. Yes, so knowing when to get people back to work without knowing what will happen tomorrow. Again, I think that communication here is key. It's key, so that your staff, they are well aware of the pandemic. They were in the business before. They know how the business operates. They know that money is not coming in. This business depends on people coming, traveling, and that is not happening anymore. So if communication is open, then they will understand that the means doesn't exist for them to be there employed full-time right now, and hopefully they'll be open to the possibility of coming back once things start to normalize. And when I say normalize, I'm not talking about normal. I don't think that will happen again. But basically, when the business starts to be stable again, I think communication is the key, because none of us saw this coming. Maureen, yes, Maureen again, how do we deal with redundancy during this period? Maureen, would you like to elaborate? How do we deal with redundancy during this period? Okay, maybe it's an extension of the previous question. How do you make people redundant? Again, I think it's about communication. But then again, looking at the difficulties of getting the right people with the right skills at the right time, I think that it shouldn't necessarily be about making them redundant, because if you make them redundant, that breaks the link to you. So I think, again, it's communication to say, things are not as they should be. We are all in this. I can't afford to pay you now. When things get better, we will talk, and then we will see how we can bring you back in. I think people will be understanding, because in this period, it's not just about your job, it's about survival, and people are looking at different ways to survive. So someone who owned a school is now a farmer, that sort of thing, so we have to think outside the box. Veronica says, we moved to an outsourcing model, which also has its own challenge. I'd love to hear how to manage a more outsourced staff HR model, how to improve engagement levels for staff. Veronica, I'm not sure what the challenges were when you moved to an outsourcing model. Perhaps it's that they were not completely familiar with your business and how it runs, your business model. So maybe it's about improving communication on that side, letting the agents understand exactly what the needs are, exactly what this business does, and then try to tailor make the recruitment to suit your needs. I think so. What's the longest someone can be on probation? This is from Rose. So Rose, I don't know what the answer to that question is. The answer may be found in your labor laws. I think that's a good starting place to see what the law says about probation. I think that 1 to 2 months, 3 months, we can start to consider it as home. 1 to 2 months, and you know that, yes, I'm on probation. Mavis says, if a particular firm operates with a small number of people, what is the best tool or strategy to use to conduct a salary survey? So I think, Mavis, I think that it's important to know what the trend is in the industry. It's good to know what your competitors are paying, and that can help to inform what you need to pay in your organization. I don't know if that answers your question. Patricia says, we haven't had business for the last 5 months. Is there a reason for us to keep the staff or let them go because of lack of funds? It's difficult to keep on staff full-time when you're not making any money. And I think it's understandable, again, going back to the answer that I gave previously, I think you need to communicate with your staff, talk about the situation which they are all aware of and the difficulty, and let them go on the understanding that when things get better, you will hire them back. It's either that or they agree to take a cut in pay. But the two options are possible. There's a question from Tina. When you don't have an HR department specifically handling employee recruitment, developing and training, what is the best way to go about this? Tina, yes. So a lot of SMEs won't have an HR department because of the size and because of the limited resources. I think you do what you can do. And that's why at the end of the presentation, I try to encapsulate what needs to be done. So basically, for a while, the CEO, you may have to be the HR person as well. You use what you have for now, but you put the systems in place. So you design the job, you design the roles and the responsibilities. You know your business, you know what you need. So you make the time to do that. And then you hire according to the design that you've done. And you basically go through the steps to do some of these things yourself. It will be on a small scale, but it will start you off with an HR system that, as I mentioned, you can grow into as you grow. How long can staff go on unpaid leave? From Zainab. Zainab, again, I think it depends on the laws of your country, on the labor laws. I think that's a good reference point to start from, to find out how long staff can go on unpaid leave. But even though you go by labor laws, the communication must be there, and after all of this, the people, the employees who were in communication, with their employers, the ones who felt they were part of the situation, they had bought into it. They are the ones who will happily come back afterwards and will be happy for you when things turn around, and they will want to come and put their shoulders to the wheel to make sure that the business continues to go forward. Thank you for that, Zainab. I don't know if I've covered all the questions. How long can a staff member be on maternity leave? Again, that will be down to the labor laws of the country. That'll be down to the labor laws of the country. I think there are a certain number of months that are allowed, so it's acceptable to go with that. Do I still need to pay? Those salaries have been slashed. Do you still need to pay for maternity leave? Those salaries have been slashed. Maybe you pay the slashed salaries, the slashed salary. because one thing you don't want to do is to be held in contempt of the laws. So you just need to make sure. And also, even the whether to pay even though salaries have been slashed, that is something that you can also seek advice on. In terms of what the law allows you to do. Do we have any more questions? Caroline, sorry.
Yeah, I was just also going to ask for last rounds of questions. I think Mavis would like you to just elaborate more on her question on tools and strategies to conduct a salary survey.
Okay. Tools and strategies to conduct a salary survey. Okay. Is it possible for Mavis to unmute herself so we can speak?
Hello.
Hello, Mavis. Hi. So what is the purpose of the salary survey?
Yes, actually want to know with regards to our industry, what other people are taking.
Yes.
Yes, let's like the operations manager, for instance, in our industry, what they are
Okay.
taking in other companies here.
Okay. So I think you need to do some detective work. You basically need to try and find out what other similar companies are paying. Maybe even the Ghana tourism, I think you're speaking from Ghana, right?
Yes, please.
I think the Ghana Tourism Authority could be a starting point.
Okay.
I think the Ghana Tourism Authority could provide some guidance as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Is it advisable to employ close relatives or family members even if they qualify for the job? So equity is very important. Equity is important. Objectivity is very important. So if you have close relatives or family members in your business, are you going to be able to be objective and treat them like you treat other employees? If there's a risk of showing favoritism, then it's a difficult one, and I would say no. On the other hand, if there's the understanding that they are coming to work in your business, they are relatives, but this is their job, this is work, and they will adhere to the same, they will be subject to the same terms and conditions, work relationships, and so on as others, then I think that is fine. There are some very successful family businesses. It shouldn't be an outright no. It is just how the relationship is conducted within the organization. That's what I believe. Thank you so much for these questions. They're really interesting, you know. They get you to think more about this. And I'm happy as well because it makes it more practical. It brings it closer to you and how this applies to you. I'm not sure whether there are any other questions.
So far from the chat, not anymore. We can do one last round of Q&A. We see another question from Minnie. She's asking, and I guess it's also a comment, integrity is also a going concern for the hospitality and tourism sector. So maybe how do you ensure integrity in HR management?
Integrity brings to mind a number of things: reputation, honesty, and yes, integrity. And it goes, if you have integrity, then it impacts positively on your reputation as a business. I think that this is something that needs to be borne in mind when you're hiring. You can't judge whether a person has integrity or not, but maybe there are certain questions that can be included in your application form, for instance, questions that bring out aspects of their character that can help you to do your selection, because your people are the face of your company. And if there's dishonesty, if people are not above board, it damages your reputation, and ultimately your business, your repeat business, your growth is based on your reputation. I don't know whether that is helpful, Minnie, but that's how I see it. The tourism business is basically its people. And so you have to make sure that those people have integrity that reflects well on the business. The other thing, actually, when where integrity is concerned, it's doing what you said you would do. So, for instance, if somebody has made a booking, going through with the booking, whether it's for a hotel, whether it is for flights, basically minimizing the customer disappointment as well, I think can speak to integrity. Agreed. Integrity it's foundational to everybody. I'm not seeing any more questions. Francisca says it's a great concern in the industry in Kenya that people poach employees from each other. And she's asking, how do we handle this in Ghana? Can we hear from our Ghanaian colleagues? How is this handled in Ghana, the problem of poaching employees from one another? Is it something that exists, and how do you deal with it?
Hi, Cindy, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was also wondering what the opinion about from my colleagues here. The only thing what I know is that I think Kenya is much more competitive when it comes to tourism. It's a much larger industry. I think here it's relatively new. So I think that is and we are fewer players, I think, in the industry. So I don't have that experience of taking people from different companies. No, I don't. We don't have that experience. But I think that, yeah, what I'm saying, the biggest difference is the industry in general in Ghana and in Kenya. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Cindy.
It'll also be good to hear from Nak. For her, she says she's experienced the complete opposite. She says it exists and she just chooses to ignore it and move on. So now if you can unmute your mic and just elaborate a bit more.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. It does exist here in Ghana as well. I've seen people who have worked in like 3, 4, 5 like companies just in Accra. What do you do? I just ignore. It's just that when I'm going to recruit the next time, I put in a little more, what should I say? Systems in place. I always I tell my employees that, look, I'm not going to stop you if you get a job that will pay you more than I am paying you. I'm doing the best that I can do. But if you want to leave, at least give me heads up. So a month, 2, so that I can get somebody and start training before you leave. You just don't get up and leave like most of them used to do. Listen, and so far, my experience, at least 2 people who have left, they actually gave me a heads up that they were leaving. And then I started recruiting somebody else and to train so that when they are leaving, I will now be hustling to do both their jobs and mine. But people do poach people. What can you do? The person is gone. There's nothing you can do. Are you going to fight the person who recruited him or the person who is left? There's nothing you can do. So I ignore and move on. After I have a business to run, I'm going to waste energy on why somebody left my business.
Thank you, Na.
Yeah.
Thank you, Na. Yeah. So those are interesting perspectives. Yes, the industry must be much more competitive in Kenya. So even though the poaching problem exists here as well, I would imagine that it is much more of an issue in Kenya, a much bigger issue in Kenya than it might be here.
Before I just read Liz's question, I just have a follow-up question to build upon Na's insights. So going back to your presentation on, for instance, employee dissatisfaction, are there ways that you can, as an employer, that you can use to kind of already see that, oh, my employee is dissatisfied, what can I do to just make sure that there's a good balance within the business to retain them?
That's a question for me.
Yes.
I think that the performance appraisal, the performance evaluation, and also the communication is an important platform to air some of these issues. So, and even without waiting for that, if you notice that your employee seems unhappy, I think it's important to be able to communicate regularly enough that you can call them in and speak to them and, you know, find out from them what the issues are and whether there's anything that you can do to help them, you know, because you may have a valued employee who has become unhappy and you don't want to lose them. So I think it's in talking to them. Again, even though I keep talking about performance appraisal as a forum for sharing, it doesn't have to be limited to that. It doesn't have to be limited to that. Communication must be ongoing. Communication must be ongoing. So as I walk past where people work, you know, I can stop and check in on them, find out how they're doing. And it's not just about the job either. I once heard an interview with business owners, and the ones who were most satisfied with their employees described how they relate to them quite closely. You know, they get to know them. They get to know them. They know the names of their children. They take interest in them as people and not just as as employees. And I think that also builds loyalty on the part of the employees. I don't know if that's helpful. I see that Julia says, I believe poaching can never be stopped, but it comes down to how we treat our staff. If they are treated well and comfortable, I don't think they'll leave, even another company tries to poach them. So that's a little bit of what I'm saying. People will leave if they've made up their mind to leave, but the way that we treat them also matters. Julia,
Hello, can I say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Like you're saying, if I'm a small business now, if a person gets a job that probably is going to pay her maybe double what I am paying her. I have a very good relationship with my the employees who have left. Some of them still call me and ask, "Oh, how are you doing?" This and that. Even especially during this COVID time, they call how is business? I know that this time, what do you call? You don't business might be tough. What are you doing and all that kind of thing. I have a very good relationship with this, and I create an atmosphere in the office. This unofficial, they say, I don't do that kind of boss employee thing, even though I have a limit to where you can go with them being unofficial. But like you're saying, if somebody gets a job that's going to pay the person 2 times, and especially a young person who is now starting life, there is no way that they will stay. Even if you treated them well, they would go. Usually it's maybe a person as old as I am who I don't pay school fees now. My kid is old, he's working, so probably I don't need that extra cash. Maybe I'm the type of person that might stay. But for a person starting as a young person, maybe 25, 30, they would leave no matter how good you treat them. I want you, give me a heads up. Don't just like, yes, but people will just like stop coming. You call them and then they will tell you, oh, I'm not feeling well. Listen, 1 week passes, 2 week passes, 3 week passes, and that's it. They don't turn up anymore. Just be frank with me. Tell me that you're leaving and give me heads up before you leave. That's what I always tell the employees, and I have it in their contract as well.
that's a good one. Thank you, Na. Thank you, Na.
We have also a question from Liz. She's asking, how applicable is force majeure in HRM in view of the COVID pandemic and the global economic crisis?
I think it's important, Liz. So we mentioned, we saw the importance of having a continuity plan. So that is planning for the unforeseen, planning for the unforeseen and how business will carry on if something that you don't expect were to happen. So I think it's a bit of scenario playing. I don't think that the best scenario, the best scenario planners would have been able to foresee COVID, but still, it's a bit of playing with scenarios. What would we do if this were to happen? What would we do if this were to happen? Looking at the way the world is going, looking at the way that my part of the world is going, what are the trends? What looks like it might happen, some time into the future? And how can I prepare my business to stand up against that? So having a plan B, basically, is what having a continuity plan is about. And the more detailed it is, I think the better it protects you. I hope that I've answered that. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, we have definitely had a very interesting session today. I think we can close the session because we've been going at it for nearly an hour and a half. Firstly, I just want to thank you, Dr. Boateng, for the training you've provided us, and also to everyone for your time. We're going to be sharing the recording and also the presentation slides with you. I'm going to stop the recording.